For decades, Pink Floyd's Another Brick in the Wall has been the ultimate anthem against tyrannical teachers. The song's most powerful story isn't about a school in Britain, but a revolution in South Africa.
On May 2nd, 1980, the South African government banned Another Brick in the Wall, making international headlines. That apartheid government imposed a cultural blockade, so to speak, on certain songs, including mine, Roger Waters said at the time.
This is the incredible story of how a rock song, born from one man's personal pain, became a weapon against an oppressive government. It's about how a ban, meant to silence a generation, only made their voices louder and created a legacy the band could have never dreamed of. This is the story of what happens when a song becomes something more. To understand how a song gets banned by an entire government, you have to know where it came from. And for Another Brick in the Wall, it all started with a single memory. The song was the centerpiece of the 1979 album, The Wall, a rock opera that was the brainchild of Pink Floyd's bassist and main lyricist, Roger Waters. The Wall is a deeply personal story about abandonment, isolation, and the emotional barriers we build. The main character, Pink, is basically a stand-in for Waters himself, and the bricks are the traumas that wall him off from the world. One of his biggest traumas? School. Waters hated his time in the British education system, seeing it as a rigid, oppressive machine designed to crush individuality, not nurture it. He saw teachers as enforcers of conformity who used dark sarcasm in the classroom to keep kids in line. The song wasn't arguing for illiteracy. It was a protest against a very specific kind of education, one that demanded thought control and churned out compliant, identical citizens. You know, like sausages from a meat grinder, just like in the movie. To give the track its iconic punch, producer Bob Ezrin had a stroke of genius. He'd worked with Alice Cooper on School's Out, and as he put it, had a thing about kids on record. So he suggested a real children's choir. An engineer found a class at the nearby Islington Green School in London, and their music teacher loved the idea. A group of 23 kids came into the studio, and their voices were layered over and over to sound like a massive youth army chanting in unison, "We don't need no education, we don't need no thought control." The effect was electric. When it was released as a single, the song shot to #1 in 14 countries, selling millions. But with success came controversy. Back in the UK, politicians and educators were aghast. The Inner London Education Authority called the song scandalous, and Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher reportedly hated it. They saw it as an attack on authority and a dangerous encouragement of rebellion.
Roger Waters later remembered, "People were really driven to frenzies of rage by it. He argued they were missing the point by taking the lyrics out of context."
But as the Archbishop of Canterbury wisely noted at the time, if the song was that popular with kids, it must be tapping into some genuine feelings they had, and that alone was worth talking about. But while Britain was debating the song's meaning, halfway across the world, a generation of students heard it not as a metaphor, but as a literal truth. They were about to turn a personal protest into a global symbol of resistance. As Another Brick in the Wall was topping charts in early 1980, it landed in a nation on the verge of exploding, apartheid-era South Africa. For decades, the country had been ruled by a brutal system of racial segregation. That system bled into everything, especially education. The government's policy, the Bantu Education Act of 1953, was explicitly designed to give black students an inferior education. One report from Stanford University put it bluntly. It was meant to limit educational potential and keep black citizens trapped in the working class. It was an education system built to oppress, not to enlighten. In February 1980, right as the Pink Floyd anthem was climbing the charts, students began boycotting their schools to protest these inequalities. The movement spread like wildfire. And in the lyrics of this British rock song, they found their rallying cry, chanting, "We don't need no education, we don't need no thought control in the streets." They transformed the song from a critique of a dreary English school into a direct condemnation of apartheid's doctrine. The song perfectly captured their feeling of being oppressed by a system. The apartheid government watched this with growing alarm. The state had a department with sweeping censorship powers, able to ban any media it decided was politically or morally undesirable. The song, now inseparable from the student uprising, was directly in its crosshairs. A religious group had already complained it would create an environment for communism, but its adoption by protesters sealed its fate. On May 2, 1980, the South African government officially banned Another Brick in the Wall. The song was yanked from the radio, and the album was pulled from stores. It was a desperate act of censorship meant to crush the rebellion. But it backfired spectacularly. The ban made international headlines, turning the song into a global symbol of the struggle. It cemented the track's status as an anti-apartheid anthem and drew a clear line in the sand.
Roger Waters would later call the government's move a cultural blockade. In solidarity, Pink Floyd refused to perform in South Africa as long as apartheid stood, joining the global cultural boycott.
The protests didn't stop. The boycotts grew more intense and were met with violence. Police shootings during these protests led to the deaths of over 40 people, and by 1985, the government had declared a state of emergency. The song may have been silenced on the airwaves, but its echo was deafening. By banning it, the South African government had amplified its power beyond anything Roger Waters could have ever intended. They took a brick from his personal, metaphorical wall and made it a foundation stone in a generation's fight for freedom. So how long was the song actually banned? The official government ban lasted about 10 years, from May 1980 until it was finally lifted around 1990 as the apartheid regime began to fall apart. So why the 30 years in the title? Well, that number really represents the long shadow this whole era cast, from the song's release in '79 through the decade of the ban, and all the way to a time when its incredible story could finally be told in a free South Africa. And that's what makes the story of this song so incredible. It shows how art can take on a life of its own. It started as one artist's reflection on his own childhood, a wall built of personal bricks.
Roger Waters himself admitted it was never meant to be some crass revolutionary standpoint, yet its message of defiance against unjust authority was so universal that it connected with thousands of young people facing a very real, very physical wall of oppression.
They didn't just hear a song, they heard their own struggle, their own anger, and their own hope. The ban in South Africa is the most dramatic chapter in the song's history, but it wasn't the only place it caused a stir. Teachers in the United States worried it would start rebellions in their own classrooms, and radio stations debated even playing it. But despite all the controversy, or maybe because of it, the song became an enduring global phenomenon. It proved that when a message is powerful enough, no ban can ever truly silence it. Today, Another Brick in the Wall Part 2 stands as a landmark protest anthem. Its legacy is twofold. It's a timeless symbol of youthful rebellion against any form of oppressive authority, whether in a classroom or a government. But more profoundly, its history is a testament to the unintended power of art. It shows how a song can be a catalyst, starting a debate in one country and fueling a revolution in another. The wall Roger Waters wrote about was a metaphorical one, but in the streets of South Africa, his song helped bring a real one tumbling down.